A victorious Roman general rides through roaring crowds beneath a massive stone arch. This monument was built to last millennia, and it has, but the Romans constructed these colossal arches without cranes or cement trucks. How do they achieve such a timeless feat of engineering? By the end of this journey, you will know the exact step-by-step process the Romans used to build their legendary arches from the ground up. We will uncover how they moved stones heavier than elephants and discover the secret to making an arch stand forever. What does it truly take to carve your victory into the sky for all time? That arch was far more than a beautiful monument. It was a weapon of mass persuasion carved in stone. Before we uncover how they built these giants, you must first understand why they were so important. The Roman Senate did not simply grant a general an arch because he won a battle. This was the highest honor, a permanent piece of propaganda designed to reshape reality itself. Think of the temporary wooden arches erected along the route of a triumphal parade, decorated with spoils and paintings of the conquest. They were magnificent, but they were fleeting. The stone arch was the solution to that problem. It was meant to take that single day of glory and freeze it for all time, transforming a temporary celebration into an everlasting statement of power. Every citizen who walked under its shadow was meant to feel the overwhelming might of Rome and the divine right of its emperor. It was a constant, unyielding reminder of who was in charge and what it meant to be Roman. This was not just architecture. It was identity set in stone, a deliberate carving of the empire's story into the very skyline of the city, ensuring that the memory of a victory and the authority it granted would echo for centuries. The leap from temporary wood to eternal stone began at the city gates. For centuries, the primary monumental entrance to a Roman city was the imposing gateway in its defensive walls. Passing through this threshold meant you were entering the domain of Rome, a powerful psychological experience in itself. The earliest triumphal arches borrowed this symbolic language of passage and authority, but they were initially built not of stone, but of wood. These temporary structures were central to the triumphal procession, or triumphus, a general's greatest day of glory. Think of them as magnificent single-use billboards, draped in captured banners, gilded weapons, and paintings depicting the great battles won. They were spectacular, but they were designed to be dismantled. Their message of power was as fleeting as the celebration itself. The decision to build the first permanent arch in stone, which historians believe occurred around the 2nd century BC, was a monumental shift in ambition. It signaled a new level of technological confidence. The Romans had mastered the arch as a structural form in bridges and aqueducts, understanding its incredible strength. Now, they possessed the engineering prowess and the artistic vision to translate that temporary symbol of military victory into a permanent fixture of the city's landscape. This was the crucial turning point. The moment a day of celebration was forged into a legacy of marble, setting the stage for the iconic imperial arches whose shadows we still walk in today. So how did they actually build something designed to stand for millennia? The answer lies not just in ambition, but in a foundation literally carved from the earth itself. The location for a triumphal arch was a decision steeped in symbolism and strategy, never left to chance. These monuments were not simply placed on any available piece of land. They were surgically implanted into the daily life of the city to ensure their message was inescapable. The most prestigious location was along the Via Sacra, the sacred way, the very road a triumphant general would travel during his parade. By placing a permanent arch on this route, the memory of that single glorious day was cemented into the city's geography. Every time a citizen walked that path, they would retrace the steps of a hero, reliving the victory with every footfall. But the strategy went even further. Arches were also built at major road intersections, like the four-sided Arch of Janus in the Forumborium. This was the ancient equivalent of placing a colossal billboard in the middle of the busiest traffic circle in the city. Thousands of people would pass by it every single day, ensuring the emperor's name and deeds were seen by merchants, travelers, and locals alike. Forums, the bustling centers of Roman public life, were another prime location, forever associating a specific public square with a specific emperor's greatest achievement. The goal was total saturation. The arch had to be seen, its shadow had to be felt, and its story had to become an unquestioned part of the Roman landscape. But once the perfect site was chosen, the real physical work could begin, starting with the most critical step of all, carving a foundation that could bear a weight meant for the gods. But a stable foundation and a prime location were nothing without a powerful vision. Two figures stood at the heart of every arch, the patron and the mastermind. The patron, almost always the emperor himself or an immensely wealthy family, provided the enormous funds required for such a project. This was not simple philanthropy. It was a calculated investment in political capital, a public demonstration of immense wealth and generosity designed to secure the favor of the people and the Senate. The emperor was essentially buying a permanent advertisement for his legacy, stamping his name and deeds onto the city for all time. To translate this ambition into reality, he turned to the architectus. This master architect was far more than a designer. He was an engineer, a project manager, and a mathematician, responsible for creating a structure that was not only beautiful but would stand for centuries. His first crucial task was to make the patron's grand vision tangible. He would likely have created detailed scale models in wood or clay, allowing the emperor to walk around a miniature version of his own glory. Elaborate drawings on parchment or wax tablets would have illustrated the intricate carvings and statues that would adorn the surface. This was the moment of truth, where a vague idea of honor was forged into a precise, buildable plan, a set of instructions that would guide hundreds of workers for years to come. But with the design approved, the architect has faced his greatest challenge: how you translate a small model into a mountain of stone, and how you find stone strong enough to hold up the sky. This first physical step was a brutal, back-breaking declaration of intent. Before a single stone of the arch could be laid, the ground itself had to be conquered. Teams of laborers, armed with little more than iron-shod wooden shovels and woven baskets, began the monumental task of excavating the foundation trenches. Their goal was not just to dig a hole, but to reach the unshakable heart of the earth, a layer of stable ground known as the bearing stratum that had not shifted for millennia. They would dig down and down, often through layers of softer topsoil and unstable fill, until their shovels hit a substrate that refused to yield. This was not a neat, tidy pit. To ensure the arch would never settle or tilt, the foundation trench was always excavated to be significantly larger than the arch's own footprint. Imagine a massive, inverted pyramid of empty space carved into the earth, a hidden anchor designed to distribute the incredible weight of the marble giant that would rise above it. Every basket of dirt hauled out by hand was an act of faith, a belief that this hidden, unseen work was the only thing that could guarantee the monument's immortality. The true strength of the arch, it turns out, began not with what they built up, but with how deeply they were willing to dig down, and into that vast, empty space, they would pour the Romans' most revolutionary building material, a liquid stone that would harden into a rock-solid cradle. Into that vast excavation, they began to build the arch's first and most vital hidden component, the statumen. This foundational layer was a deliberate chaos of large, rough stones, some as big as a man could carry, packed tightly together into the bottom of the trench. The material itself was often rubble concrete, what the Romans called opus cementitium, a revolutionary mix of lime mortar and aggregate that would cure into a mass as strong as natural rock. The workers were not building for beauty here, they were building for brute strength. Each irregular stone was carefully placed and pounded into position, creating a rough, interlocking matrix deep within the earth. The entire purpose of this rugged base was to act as a giant, underground shock absorber. It had to distribute the unbelievable weight of the marble arch above it, a weight that could otherwise cause the entire structure to crack or sink into the softer ground over centuries. Think of it like the wide, sturdy soles of a massive pair of boots, preventing the giant from sinking into the mud. This statumen layer was the unsung hero of the arch's longevity, a testament to Roman pragmatism. They knew that the glory of the sculptures and inscriptions high above depended entirely on this rough, unseen work in the dark. Only when this robust foundation was perfectly level and compacted could they move on to the next, finer layer, creating a multi-layered cake of strength hidden beneath the surface. With the stamen providing its brute strength in the darkness below, the next layers focused on precision and perfection. Upon that rugged base of stone, workers poured a thick stratum known as the rudis. This was a carefully mixed concoction of coarse rubble, gravel, and a powerful lime mortar, tamped down to create a dense, unyielding mattress. Its job was to absorb any remaining minor shifts in the earth and to provide a perfectly level surface for the most critical layer of all. That final, hidden surface was the nucleus. Its name, meaning the core or the seed, tells you everything about its importance. This was not a rough layer. It was a masterful blend of crushed brick, pottery shards, and an exceptionally fine lime mortar, mixed into a consistency that could be packed and polished to an almost perfectly flat stone-like slab. Imagine a Roman artisan using a long, perfectly straight wooden board, dragging it across the wet surface of the nucleus to scree it level, his eyes searching for the tiniest imperfection. This was the stage upon which the arch itself would finally begin to rise, the flawless platform that would determine the alignment of every single stone block for centuries to come. A single mistake here, a slight tilt or a soft spot, and the entire magnificent structure above could lean or crack under its own weight. The entire goal of these hidden layers, from the stamen to the rudis to the nucleus, was to create an artificial bedrock, a man-made foundation as stable as the Earth's own crust. Only when this platform was set hard and true could the true artistry begin. High in the mountains of Luna, the journey of a single stone block began with the search for perfection. Roman quarrymen, their eyes trained to read the mountain like a map, would scour the marble faces for the telltale signs of a flawless vein. They were not just laborers, they were geologists without instruments, listening for the ring of a healthy strike against the stone and searching for hidden cracks or discolorations that could spell disaster years later. Once they identified a pristine section, the real work commenced. Using iron-tipped chisels, they would painstakingly carve deep channels, sometimes several feet long, along the sides and back of the intended block. This was slow, exhausting work, each hammer blow a calculated effort to isolate a giant. Into these channels, they would drive dry wooden wedges. Then the waiting began. Teams of workers would pour water over the wedges. As the wood soaked, it expanded with immense, relentless force. This is not a violent explosion, but a controlled fracture, a low groan from the mountain as the weight of the stone and the power of swelling wood conspired to separate a perfect block from the living rock. It was a delicate operation, too much force in the wrong place, and the marble would shatter into useless fragments, wasting months of effort. The goal was a single, unbroken monolith, perhaps weighing as much as 50 tons, now lying at the base of the quarry face. But this was only the first victory. How do you move a stone heavier than 10 elephants from a mountainside to the heart of a city dozens of miles away? That 50-ton block of marble now had to travel. Its journey from the quarry to the heart of Rome was a logistical puzzle of epic proportions, a testament to Roman organization that was as impressive as the engineering of the arch itself. First, the stone had to descend from the mountain. Workers constructed a reinforced roadway of packed earth and timber, a temporary ramp just strong enough to bear the colossal weight. The block was then carefully levered onto a massive, rugged wooden sledge. Ropes, thick as a man's arm, were attached. Teams of oxen, sometimes dozens of them, would strain against their yokes, while gangs of men worked a system of wooden capstans, winding the ropes to inch the sledge down the slope with agonizing slowness. A single misstep could send the priceless stone careening into the ravine below. Once at sea level, the stone met its most efficient mode of transport, the Roman cargo barge. These were not ordinary ships. They were floating fortresses of timber, built with extra heavy hulls to support their incredible cargo. Using ramps and a complex arrangement of levers and pulleys, crews would maneuver the block onto the barge's deck, securing it firmly for the long coastal voyage. The journey to Rome was a slow, dangerous dance with the sea, sailing down the coast before turning into the mouth of the Tiber River. But the river itself presented the final great challenge. How do you move a mountain upstream? The answer lay in brute human and animal force. Teams of oxen and men on the riverbanks would literally tow the barges against the current, hauling them mile by grueling mile up the Serpentine River until they reached the city's dock. The stone had arrived, but its journey was only half over. Now it had to navigate the chaotic, crowded streets of Rome itself. That 50-ton block of marble, fresh from its river journey, was still just a rough-hewn giant. It now entered the domain of the Lapicidina, the master stone mason. His workshop was a symphony of controlled chaos, filled with the constant, rhythmic percussion of metal on stone. His first and most critical task was to transform this mountainous raw block into a perfect ashlar, a squared building block with surfaces so smooth and edges so true they would fit together with they seem almost too fine to see. He began with his simplest, most brutal tools, a heavy metal point chisel and a wooden mallet. With a sculptor's eye, he would knock off the largest protrusions and irregularities, slowly revealing the geometric shape hidden within the stone. This rough shaping was just the preamble. For the true precision work, he switched to a flat chisel called a claw tool, its cutting edge serrated like teeth. Dragging this across the stone's surface in controlled passes, he would shave it down, pass by painstaking pass, until it was nearly flat. But near flat was not enough for a Roman art. The final surface was achieved with a drag, a flat piece of iron with an even finer toothed edge, which would scrape the last imperfections away, leaving a finish as smooth as polished wood. Yet the most telling signature of Roman stonework is the drafted margin. Along the edge of each block, the mason would carve a shallow, perfectly straight channel, leaving a raised border. This wasn't for decoration. This raised border protected the vulnerable edges of the stone during transport and construction, preventing chips and cracks that could compromise the final fit. But how could one man, with simple hand tools, possibly ensure that a block weighing tons was perfectly square and level? His final tools were his arbiters of truth. A wooden frame level, filled with water, would tell him if a surface was perfectly flat. A plumb bob, a simple weight on a string, would confirm that his sides were truly vertical. With these ancient instruments, he could achieve an accuracy that rivals modern machinery, proving that the true secret to Roman engineering was not magic, but an uncompromising standard of craftsmanship. Each block was now a perfect geometric puzzle piece, but how you assemble a stone puzzle that must hold up an entire city's worth of weight without a single drop of glue? With each stone block perfectly shaped, the true test of ambition began. The first visible structures to rise from that flawless foundation were the two massive piers, the immense vertical legs that would bear the entire weight of the arch. Constructing these giants was a slow, rhythmic crescendo of labor and precision. Teams of workers, guided by the architect's meticulous plan, would lay the first course of stones directly onto the polished nucleus layer. Each block was a foundation for the next, and the masons checked their alignment with relentless care, knowing that a single misaligned stone could throw the entire structure off true. The initial layers were manageable, but as the piers grew skyward, the challenge became monumental. How you lift a stone weighing several tons to a height of 30, 40, or even 50 feet? The answer was a symphony of simple machines and human power. Wooden hoists and cranes, their frames towering over the worksite, were positioned beside the rising piers. The real engine of these machines was not a motor, but a giant, human-powered treadmill. Imagine a massive wooden wheel, like a hamster wheel built for several men. Laborers would step inside this wheel, walking endlessly forward. Their collective weight and effort would rotate a central drum, winding a heavy rope that slowly, inexorably, lifted the stone block from the ground. It was a grueling, dangerous ballet of strength and coordination, with every lift calculated to avoid a catastrophic slip. As each stone ascended, it had to be guided into its exact position with nothing but levers and muscle. But simply stacking the stones was not enough to withstand the test of centuries. The Romans knew that the real strength of the pier lay in the bonds between each block. They used only a thin layer of lime mortar, not as a primary glue, but as a leveling bed to ensure a perfect fit. The true locking mechanism was hidden from view. Across the top of a newly placed stone, masons would carve deep, dovetail-shaped channels. Into these channels, they would fit metal clamps, known as crampons, forged from iron or bronze. Then, they would pour molten lead into the cavity surrounding the metal. As the lead cooled and solidified, it expanded, locking the clamp into its socket with an iron grip. This created an invisible metal skeleton within the stone, tying each block to its neighbors with unbreakable bonds. These piers were not just stacks of rock. They were interlocked monoliths, growing stronger with every course, patiently waiting to shoulder the impossible weight of the arch's crowning glory. Yet the piers themselves were merely a prelude to the true architectural magic. Between them stood a vast, empty space, a gap that all this stone was meant to bridge. Filling that void required a radical act of engineering faith, a structure that defied gravity itself. To understand how it worked, we need to pause the construction for a moment and step inside the mind of the Roman architect. The secret was not in fighting the immense weight of the masonry, but in guiding it. The Romans mastered a fundamental principle of physics known as compression. Every stone in the structure pushes downward with its own weight, and that force has to go somewhere. The genius of the arch is that it redirects this crushing force, transforming it from a downward plunge into an outward thrust. The individual wedge-shaped stones that form the arch are called voussoirs. Each one is a precisely cut trapezoid, wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. When they are assembled, they lean against one another. The weight from the top of the arch pushes down on the voussoirs, and because of their angled sides, that force is channeled diagonally outward and downward through the curve of the arch and into the massive piers. The piers, in turn, are built to be so immensely thick and heavy for one reason: to absorb and resist this powerful outward push, anchoring the entire system. But this elegant system of balanced forces has one critical point of failure, a single, terrifying moment of truth that every Roman engineer dreaded. The entire arch, with all its sculpted glory, was completely unstable until the very last piece was set. All the wooden scaffolding and centering that held the voussoirs in place was just a temporary crutch. The structure was a collection of individual stones precariously propped up, waiting for the one element that would make it all click into place and stand on its own. That element was the keystone. This was the climax of the entire years-long project. The master mason would watch as the final central voussoir, often slightly larger and more decorated than the others, was painstakingly hoisted into the gap at the arch's crown. The workers would hold their breath. With infinite care, they would lower it, and then, the moment of transformation, as the keystone slid into its perfect wedge-shaped slot, the entire arch locked. The outward thrust was instantly balanced. The compression forces snapped into a perfect, stable equilibrium. The wooden supports could now be removed, and for the first time, the arch stood entirely on its own, a permanent, self-supporting stone bridge across the sky. The skeleton of the monument was complete, but the story it was built to tell had only just begun to be carved. The true genius of the arch lay in a temporary structure of wood. Before a single wedge-shaped stone could be hoisted into the air, the master carpenters had to build a perfect wooden skeleton, a curved framework known as centering, that would hold the entire arch in place during its most vulnerable phase. This was no simple scaffold. It was an intricate, custom-built form, a mirror image of the intended arch carved from timber. Skilled carpenters, working from the architect's precise templates, would construct this framework on the ground, assembling massive beams and planks into the exact curve the stone would follow. Once assembled, this wooden arch was then lifted as a single unit and fixed into position between the waiting stone piers, its curved top perfectly defining the inner space of the future archway. This centering had one job: to act as a temporary cradle for the immense weight of the stone voussoirs. Every joint, every beam, was calculated to bear a load of dozens of tons without bending or buckling. The carpenters knew that the slightest sag in their wooden frame would become a permanent, catastrophic flaw in the stone arch above. For months, sometimes years, this timber skeleton would stand as the silent, unseen partner to the rising stone, holding the entire project in a state of suspended animation. It was a breathtaking act of faith in both carpentry and calculation. The entire monument's future rested on the strength of this temporary wooden structure, a framework destined to be torn away the moment its purpose was fulfilled. Above the great curve of the arch, The story of the monument was permanently etched into a massive block of stone known as the attic. This imposing, box-like superstructure served a dual purpose, both practical and profoundly symbolic. Its immense bulk provided a solid, stable base for the grand statuary that would crown the entire edifice, often a magnificent bronze chariot group or statues of captured enemies. But its most important function was to serve as a permanent billboard, a canvas for the inscription that told the world exactly why this arch existed and who was responsible for its glory. This was no simple carving. The letters were often cast in gleaming bronze, known as literiori or golden letters, and then meticulously fastened to the prepared marble surface. The inscription itself was a masterclass in political messaging, a carefully curated public record. It always began with the emperor's name and his full, accumulated titles, a litany of power listing his military victories, his role as chief priest, and the number of times he had been hailed as commander. Then came the reason for the honor, a succinct declaration of his great deeds. To read this inscription was to receive the official, state-sanctioned version of history, a narrative of victory and virtue carved not just in stone, but in metal meant to catch the sun. Every glint of light on those bronze letters was a reminder of the man who had earned the right to reshape the city's skyline, ensuring that his name and his story would be the one that endured for all time. With the arch's skeleton complete and its political message cast in bronze letters, the final, most time-consuming act of creation could begin. The blank marble surfaces of the pier walls and the inner vault became the canvas for the empire's official story, carved over years by teams of master sculptors. This was not random decoration. This elaborate sculptural program was a deliberate stone-carved narrative designed to be read and understood by every citizen, literate or not. The reliefs that wrapped around the arch formed a continuous visual epic, depicting the emperor's greatest military campaigns in painstaking detail. Viewers could follow scenes of disciplined legions building fortifications, chaotic battles against foreign warriors, and the solemn submission of conquered kings. These were not imagined scenes. The sculptors worked from official records, likely the emperor's own commentary or campaign diaries, which provided a detailed, state-approved account of events. This ensured a powerful blend of historical accuracy and pure propaganda. The goal was to present the conquest not as a brutal war, but as a glorious, righteous, and inevitable extension of Roman order over chaos. Every charging horse, every raised standard, every gesture of surrender was meticulously planned and carved to reinforce a single, unchallengeable truth. The emperor was a divinely favored leader, and his enemies were destined to fall. But how could a static stone image convey the dynamism and chaos of a real battle? The sculptors achieved this through a masterful technique known as differential relief. The most important figures, like the emperor himself, were carved in high relief, standing out sharply from the background, almost as if they were three-dimensional statues attached to the wall. Lesser figures and background elements, like distant soldiers or landscapes, were rendered in much shallower, low relief. This created a powerful sense of depth and movement, guiding the viewer's eye to the most critical moments of the story. You are not just looking at a flat picture, you are being drawn into the scene, made to feel the emperor's central, commanding presence amidst the fray. This visual hierarchy was no accident. It was a deliberate tool of persuasion, ensuring that even in the most complex scene, your attention was always directed exactly where the state wanted it. The arch was now more than a monument. It was a stone history book, its pages open to the sky, telling a story of victory meant to be believed for 1,000 years. But these sculpted narratives of conquest were not always carved from fresh marble. Sometimes, the story was told with stones taken directly from the vanquished. This practice was known as spolia, the deliberate reuse of architectural elements and sculptures from older monuments, and it was a language of power all its own. On an arch like that of Constantine the Great, this becomes startlingly clear. Walk around that arch today, and you will see a visual patchwork. The sculptures from Constantine's own time are noticeably different in style, with a stiffer, more symbolic approach. But interspersed among them are magnificent, dynamic roundels and statues plundered from monuments built by the great emperors of the 2nd century, like Trajan and Hadrian. This was far more than a practical decision to save time or money. It was a profound political statement. By literally embedding the art of Rome's golden age into his own monument, Constantine was creating a visible lineage of power. He was visually arguing that he was the direct successor to those legendary rulers, that their virtue and military success flowed directly into his own reign. The spolia were not just recycled stone, they were recycled legitimacy. This act of architectural repurposing sent a powerful message to the Roman people. It showed that the new emperor was not destroying the past, but rather assimilating it, claiming its greatest glories as his own. The arch became a physical demonstration of conquest, not just of foreign lands, but of Roman history itself, proving that the empire's present could cannibalize its past to build a more powerful future. Yet this mastery of stone was only half the story. The true revolution in Roman engineering, the secret that allowed them to build on such an impossible scale, was a material they created from the very earth beneath their feet. We call it Roman concrete or opus cementitium, and it was nothing short of architectural alchemy. While the grand facades of many triumphal arches were indeed majestic slabs of marble, the hidden core within was often something far more advanced. For many structures, the Romans would construct the interior of the massive piers not from solid stone, but by pouring this liquid rock. Imagine the scene. Workers would mix a simple-sounding recipe, a combination of lime, water, and a special volcanic ash called pozzolana, mined from the slopes of volcanoes. To this sticky mortar, they would add an aggregate, often rubble from older buildings, broken bricks, or even small stones. This was not a careful, pristine process. It was a messy, vigorous act of creation, resulting in a thick, porridge-like mixture that could be poured into wooden forms erected between the beautiful stone faces of the pier. This concrete core would then cure, not simply dry, but undergo a complex chemical reaction. The pozzolana reacted with the lime and water to form a crystal structure that was not only as strong as natural stone, but actually gained strength over time, especially when exposed to moisture. This created a monolithic, artificial rock within the pier, a single, continuous mass that bound everything together. The advantages were profound. A concrete core was significantly lighter than a solid stone pier of the same size, reducing the immense load on the foundations. More importantly, it was flexible. Unlike rigid stone, which could crack under stress, the concrete could absorb subtle shifts and settlements in the ground without failing. It filled every void, locked every stone-facing block into place, and transformed the pier from a stack of individual blocks into a single, unified, and incredibly resilient mass. The beautiful marble skin was the empire's public face, but this rough, poured heart was the source of its enduring strength. The magnificent marble skin of the arch was a masterpiece of illusion. Behind that gleaming, polished facade lay a far more pragmatic reality. The Romans perfected a technique that allowed them to display immense opulence while using their most precious materials with brilliant economy. They did not build the entire arch from solid marble blocks. Instead, they constructed the core of the piers and attic from cheaper, locally sourced stone or from their incredibly strong concrete. Then, they cloaked this rough, functional core in a thin, magnificent skin of imported marble. These facing slabs were cut with astonishing precision, often just a few inches thick, transforming a mountain of common rubble into a monument of imperial splendor. The process of attaching this stone veneer was a precise and permanent operation. Workers would first prepare the rough core surface, ensuring it was as level as possible. Then, they would hoist the massive marble panels into place. On the hidden back of each slab, masons had carved deep, diagonal channels. Corresponding channels were cut into the core masonry. Into these grooves, they fitted heavy metal clamps, usually forged from bronze for its resistance to rust. The final, locking step was to pour molten lead into the cavities around the clamps. As the lead cooled and hardened, it expanded, creating an unbreakable metal grip that fused the beautiful marble skin to the sturdy, hidden body of the arch. This was not a superficial decoration. It was a permanent marriage of strength and beauty, an ingenious solution that allowed the empire to project an image of limitless wealth without the impossible cost and weight of building entirely from solid marble. The arch could now stand as a unified whole, its rough, powerful heart perfectly concealed beneath a breathtaking mask of polished perfection. But even with its marble skin and concrete heart, the arch was not yet complete. Its final defense against time was engineered at the very top, a system designed for a timeless battle against wind and rain. Crowning the massive attic was a roof, a feature often overlooked but utterly essential. This was not a simple slab. For the grandest monuments, it was a sloping structure sheathed in gleaming bronze tiles, a final, dazzling cap of imperial wealth that caught the sun for miles around. This metal roof served a vital purpose beyond spectacle. It was the arch's primary shield, deflecting the relentless onslaught of rain away from the sculpted narratives and inscribed marble below. Without it, water would pool on the flat attic, seeping into the joints and slowly, inexorably, tearing the monument apart from the inside through freeze-thaw cycles and erosion. But a roof creates its own problem, concentrating rainfall into powerful streams. The Roman engineers had a brilliant, elegant solution for this, carved directly into the stone itself. Along the edges of the roof line, they sculpted channels and gutters to catch the cascading water, and at regular intervals, they integrated spouts, often carved into the mouths of fierce animals or mythical beasts. We know these features today as gargoyles, though their function was far more practical than grotesque. Imagine a heavy Roman downpour. Water sheets off the bronze tiles, flows into the carved gutters, and is funneled toward these stone creatures. Then, with purposeful force, it jets from their open mouths, projecting several feet away from the arch's vulnerable facade. This was hydraulic genius. Each downpour became a performance, a demonstration of the arch's resilience. The system ensured that destructive rainwater was thrown clear of the foundation and the delicate stonework, preventing stains, erosion, and the silent, creeping damage of moisture. The arch could now stand impervious, its stories kept dry and legible, its glory meant to endure not for centuries, but for millennia. The stark white marble was not the arch's final appearance. Before the public unveiling, the monument underwent a breathtaking transformation, a final act of polishing and embellishment that turned a masterpiece of engineering into a radiant beacon. Teams of workers, armed with nothing but simple tools and immense patience, began the arduous process of bringing the stone to life. They used progressively finer abrasives, starting with coarse sand and moving to powdered emery, rubbing the marble surfaces for days on end. This relentless polishing created a surface so smooth it felt like glass, a brilliant white canvas that would reflect the sun with dazzling intensity. But the true magic happened when the gilders arrived. For the most important elements, like the gleaming bronze letters of the inscription or the eyes and armor of sculpted figures, they applied the final, most expensive touch, gold leaf. This was a painstaking art. They would prepare the surface with a special adhesive, then, using the lightest breath and the most delicate brushes, carefully lay down sheets of gold so thin they were virtually weightless. The effect upon completion was staggering. When the sun struck the arch, it did not simply illuminate it, it set it on fire. The polished marble gleamed, and the gilded details blazed with a divine light, a visual declaration of an empire that could quite literally touch the sun. This was the ultimate statement of power, a monument that was not merely built, but perfected, designed to overwhelm the senses and burn its glory directly into the memory of every citizen who beheld it. The gleaming arch stood silent and empty, a monument awaiting its soul. That soul arrived with the thunder of a city in celebration. The day of dedication was far more than a ribbon cutting. It was a profound ritual of transformation, a ceremony designed to bridge the gap between the mortal and the divine. The air would have been thick with the scent of incense and burning sacrifices. Priests in white robes led the solemn procession, guiding pure white bulls to an altar erected before the new monument. With a single practiced stroke, the animal's life was offered to Jupiter Optimus Maximus, the king of the gods, or to the divine spirit of the emperor himself. This sacred act was the crucial first step, a plea for divine favor that consecrated the stone, transforming it from a mere building into a sacred object, a permanent part of Rome's spiritual fabric. Then, the patron emperor or a high-ranking senator would step forward to address the roaring crowd. His speech was not a simple thank you. It was a powerful recitation of the very deeds carved into the marble behind him, a living voice breathed into the stone narrative. He reminded the people of the great victory, of the peace it secured, and of the boundless generosity of the emperor who had funded this eternal gift to the city. This was the final, crucial layer of the arch's construction, not made of marble or metal, but of public memory and shared experience. Following the speeches, the festivities would erupt. The state might fund days of public games, chariot races in the Circus Maximus, or gladiatorial contests, all offered as a gift to the people. The arch itself became the backdrop to this civic joy, its shadow falling upon citizens who were feasting, laughing, and celebrating the very power it represented. In this single, spectacular day, the arch completed its journey. It was no longer a construction project. It was now a sacred site, a political statement, and a public gift, forever woven into the daily life and spiritual identity of Rome. That final, sacred dedication was just the beginning of the arch's long life. For centuries after the cheering crowds dispersed, the monument required constant, vigilant care to prevent its slow surrender to time and the elements. This was not a task left to chance. The Roman state employed a special class of official known as the curators, public curators, whose sole responsibility was the preservation of the city's great monuments. These were not simple janitors. They were highly respected administrators, often former senators or wealthy equestrians, appointed to oversee the eternal upkeep of Rome's architectural soul. Their duties were vast and critical. They managed public funds allocated for maintenance, organized teams of skilled workers for repairs, and conducted regular inspections, walking the city with a critical eye for the first signs of decay. A single cracked cornice, a loose piece of veneer, or a slowly spreading water stain could signal the start of a major problem. The curators were the first line of defense, the guardians of the empire's stone memory. One of their most vital and ongoing tasks was the cleaning of the marble surfaces. The arch stood exposed to soot from countless braziers, dust from unpaved streets, and the general grime of a teeming city. Teams of workers would carefully scrub the sculpted reliefs and polish facades, likely using water, abrasive sands, and perhaps even vinegar to dissolve stubborn deposits. This regular cleansing was essential, not just for beauty, but for clarity. The story carved into the stone had to remain legible, its visual narrative of power uninterrupted by the filth of daily life. The most tempting targets for thieves, however, were the bronze fittings, the gleaming letters of the Attic inscription, the decorative rosettes, and the heavy metal clamps hidden within the stone were all made of valuable, reusable metal. Under cover of darkness, a thief with a chisel could pry loose a single bronze letter, defacing the emperor's name and selling the metal for a small fortune. The curators had to be ever watchful for such vandalism. When theft or damage occurred, they would commission exact replacements, ensuring that the arch's political message and its structural integrity remained perfectly intact. This cycle of inspection, cleaning, and repair, managed by these dedicated officials, was what transformed a single day of glory into a legacy that could truly span the ages. The arch was not built to be abandoned. It was built to be watched over, a permanent project of the Roman state, ensuring that its stone voice would never fall silent. That same architectural language of power, perfected in Rome, did not remain confined to its city walls. It began a journey across continents and centuries, evolving from a monument to a specific emperor into the universal symbol for victory itself. The path of this idea is written in stone across the globe. You can trace it directly from the 1st century Arch of Titus in the Roman Forum, with its famous reliefs of the menorah from Jerusalem, all the way to the colossal Arc de Triomphe standing at the heart of modern Paris. The form is unmistakably Roman, but the meaning has been adapted and claimed by empires and nations for 2,000 years. In the Renaissance, rulers looked back to Rome as the peak of civilization, and they began building arches not just for military triumphs, but to celebrate their own cultural rebirth, consciously linking their rule to the glory of the ancient Caesars. Then came Napoleon Bonaparte, who explicitly modeled his Arc de Triomphe on the Roman examples he admired. He understood that to command the future, you must first borrow the iconography of the most powerful past. This was not simple imitation. It was a deliberate act of claiming legitimacy, of draping a new regime in the timeless authority of Rome. The arch became a shorthand for greatness, so powerful that its form was replicated in Washington Square Park in New York, the India Gate in New Delhi, and countless other civic monuments around the world. These structures may celebrate different victories for different peoples, but they all speak the same architectural language first codified by the Romans. They are all descendants of that original, brilliant idea that the best way to make a victory permanent is to carve it into the sky for all to see, a legacy in stone that continues to define how we monumentalize our own achievements today. From the dark heart of a mountain quarry to its sacred consecration in the city center, the life of a Roman arch was a symphony of human effort. This was not the work of a single genius, but the coordinated labor of thousands, from the quarrymen who listened to the mountain to the gilders who breathed gold onto its surface. Each arch stands as a perfect fusion of brute force and delicate artistry, of pragmatic engineering and profound political theater. They are timeless testaments to an ambition that seems almost alien to us today, a civilization so confident in its permanence that it carved its victories into the very sky, demanding to be remembered not for a generation, but for all time. The next time you stand before one of these stone giants, whether in person or in a photograph, look past the weathered marble, see the drafted margins on the stone blocks placed by a mason 2,000 years ago. Trace the path of the water that once shot from a lion-headed spout. Read the story in the reliefs, not just as ancient history, but as the final, enduring act of a people who believed they could build forever. You are not just looking at an old monument, you are witnessing the culmination of a Roman dream, a dream of eternal glory made miraculously, tangibly real.